It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand. My name's Lewis. Hi. I'm the host of the show. Bit of a Sesame Street intro today. Okay. Some numbers. This show brought to you by the number 86, the number 21, and the number 95. Also, a cameo role from number 100. This exercise and framing of the following story involving the use of numerals is to mask the existential pain and angst that I've suffered as a result of the following story. So, 95. 95 was, or is, this episode number, but this is the second episode 95. And the second guest for episode 95, because number 21, on the 21st of November, 2020, I spoke to Luke Buddha from the Phoenix Foundation, an episode that will never air or transmit via binary or whatever the non-radio term is for this format, because, by the way, Luca and I, or Luke rather, or Lucas, when he left the power station in top of Mount Eden, pretty much near the CBD, and Ubered to my place in the middle of the CBD, spoke of the random acts of crime he saw on the 7 or 8 minute journey. So we finished that conversation, and Luke offers me a name on the door for his band, the Phoenix Foundation, show that evening at said power station. I go for not as long as perhaps I should have as a guest, being over 40 now and more likely to be found on the couch with snacks than standing in a venue. Great show though, the Bit Hall. Home in less than an hour and a half after I left. Went to make some said snacks before a series of events in terms of spotting things quickly led me to realise that I'd been really badly burgled, which included the podcast setup, which included the data on the memory card, which included the conversation with Luke. And now here we are, a second episode 95, which was fantastic, as the one with Luke was. I'll speak on this in a sec with Orlando. But just in the interim, tying that story up, very completely bizarre. I live in a locked off floor of an apartment. I don't want to get too into the weeds on this, or we'll end up with a drearily long intro, but I'm pretty sure it was an inside job. Police couldn't do much. Arguably did less than even the little they can do, but again, that's another story. I didn't have insurance. That's on me. I've had it in the past. That's another story. Someone offered to do a crowdfunding initiative, and I refused for a number of reasons. Not really that affected by COVID in terms of income. Don't have dependents. People worse off than me. But then it was reframed a week or two later by someone who offered to set up one via donating to my podcast, which I thought about and agreed to, because this is a labour of love, and I've invested a lot of time and money into it, and I felt that was a much more fitting affair, completely directed toward this project. Long of that is a bunch of beautiful people who I'll give a wee mention to at the end of this episode, donated enough that I bought another Rodecaster, which is the kind of central unit of producing this show these days. So that's lovely. Last thing on being burgled, it floors you, man. When the police said, "Do you want victim support?" I thought, that's ridiculous. Like I haven't been touched somewhere funny or anything. But it is very traumatic, and you lose a lot of trust, and you get irrationally angry, and you start to think people are up to stuff that they're not. That's amplified by the fact that you're pretty sure it was an inside job, someone in the building. Let's move on from that to brighter days. So, actually, the segue between that and recording episode 95 yesterday is I wanted to get to 100 episodes by the end of 2020 last year, and I could have cobbled together the kind of spare bits and bobs I've got to go out and record eps, but I related to the kind of the impact and the trauma of the burglary and just the year that we'd had. You know what I'm saying? 2020. I decided just to kick back. So that comes to the number 86, which I haven't brought up yet. You're probably on the edge of your seat going, where's 86? 86 days is how long it's been since an episode went up, 94. The longest verbal hiatus the show's been on since I started in 2017. But listening back to yesterday's conversation, I realised it was a really great thing to do because I know myself so well listening back, and I'm very relaxed and focused and good at engaging my guest, who is great. His name's Orlando Stewart. He makes pretty weird and wonderful moving image. Made the cult television show Wayne Anderson's Singer of Songs. I'll let the conversation speak for itself, but I will say we talked convent life, Dawn Raid, Howick, the ethics of documentary making, Back of the Wire, which you can find on TVNZ On Demand, and of course, Mr. Wayne Anderson. I ask such hard-hitting questions as, will cinemas survive? What makes a good director? What is a producer? To the basics there. And also, is pornography the lifeblood of the video stores, or was it the lifeblood of video stores of ye olde? To which I get quite a harrowing story about the state of a video cassette that was returned to the store where he worked. Stops to sip for effect. By the way, get in touch if you know the name of the 1980s Australian documentary that Orlando mentions, but we can't get a name for. I've not seen it. He says it's great. Would love to hear from you. My contact details are at the end. We discuss a number of projects Orlando has had a hand in as follows: Love is a Painkiller, which you can find on Vimeo; Wayne Anderson, Singer of Songs, which is on YouTube; The Dump, which is on New Zealand On Screen; Anika Moore Reunited, which is on TVNZ On Demand; Who Killed Lucy the Poodle, which is on TVNZ On Demand; Rural Drift, there's one episode online somewhere; and Welcome to Cardboard City, which is on TVNZ On Demand. I guested on a show. I was their first episode. It's called That Kiwi Podcast Show, and it profiles different New Zealand podcasts each week. It derived from the person who started that show seeing my New Zealand podcast directory, which you can find via my website, verbalhighs.com/nzpods. Koha for this project, this show, my show, the podcast is liking, sharing and subscribing. Please leave a review on iTunes or similar. That's about us. On to Orlando. My social medias are Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter. You can also contact me directly, especially if you know what the Australian film is that is mentioned. One word, verbalhighs@gmail. If you've got hot tips on a guest or leads on a guest, get in touch there as well.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
So, friend of the earth, you just turn on the air conditioning periodically.
Yeah.
How often does it get put on in a day? Get up closer to the microphone.
I would say, just every now and then, you know.
Yeah.
Once I'm sweating. Yeah.
So we're in the old Auckland Trades Hall building. What would this be, 1960s? It's got I've got memories of this style of building in my childhood when there was still lots of them around.
It's very gliding on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it have hand-painted signs in the urinal and stuff? Does it still have all that old?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long have you been up here?
I've been here a couple of years, and I love it because, like next door there's a guy who does ACC claims, for people, and, there's tenancy protection. And, there's all these unions, and most of my sisters are union workers.
Tramways are still downstairs.
Tramways are still there. They've just gotten themselves a computer.
Yeah.
So the technology race is on.
This is a great space for. This is the base for your production company, I take it.
Yeah, this is kind of my office, I guess.
Yeah.
And quite often used to shoot in as well.
The whole building, or here?
Yeah. So with the Sextortion, we shot a lot of it here.
Yeah.
So downstairs there's a hall, and then there's a tea room which we shot in, and so we do.
And the building are really relaxed about it?
Yeah, they're really great.
Great.
Yeah.
I still reckon if you come over a bit closer to these, because they're condensers, they're sort of designed to... Okay.
So I've got to get close. Yeah. There we go. Here we are.
I was trying to alleviate, you said you're a little bit nervous, so I thought I'll just indulge in a little bit of chat about the building, and then I'll get you to move closer. So you said with quite an expression, who told you about me? And it was, I think... from memory, because I put a call out on Facebook, it was a guy called Craig Spraggan. Do you recognise that surname?
Oh, I know Craig.
Yeah.
Grapple.
Yeah.
I've known Craig since I was 14.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly where he listens, but I'm guessing he might be hearing his name in his headphones right now where you are, Craig. Driving a bus in Sydney, which I think is what he does these days. Because did you do something for his brother for Solar Rosa? I saw you post about that. I thought you might have made that mini doco.
No, I didn't make it, but I've known the Spraggan family for quite a while.
Area you grew up?
Yep, east side massive, Howick.
Howick.
Yeah, Howick by the sea. So, yeah.
How was the Howick that you grew up in?
I guess it was, a kind of very white, quite affluent, middle-class suburb. We were kind of, I guess... a little bit the outsiders in some ways. I'm the oldest of 9.
Yeah.
And,
9?
So, we weren't affluent.
Yeah.
We were kind of living in a convent at the time. And we were kind of, I guess, bastions of alternative culture in the eastern suburbs. And so... I was drawn to people like, the Spraggans and...
What sort of era, did you grow up in?
Well, I guess mid to late 80s, really, yeah.
And I can't let that little nugget go by because it's curious. Why did you grow up in a convent?
Well, because there were 9 of us, and so my parents... We moved from Christchurch to Auckland, and so we moved... Yeah, to this, eventually ended up paying very little money for this fantastic convent where us 9 kids just ran wild,
Oh, so you weren't living in a functioning...
No, it was a former convent.
I thought you were meaning that your parents had, shipped you off because there were too many of them, and it was kind of a sad...
If only.
A sad adopted out story. I was kind of trying to tippy-toe around.
It was actually a really... fun time because for the first time it was with 9 of us, and we had a hall and we had 6 toilets and we all had our own rooms, and it was because it had been a former convent and we just kind of took over.
Is it still there?
No, they knocked it down.
Yeah, it sounded for development. That must have been a sad moment when you saw that disappear.
It was a little bit sad, and I went and got a little bit of the wall. It was this beautiful old building, and it was sad on that level too to see it. I think the chapel's still there, but housing,
housing or anything, or any square footage of land. When did you from high school and from knocking around with those guys? Did you go straight into kind of filmmaking and moving image production, or was that something that came later?
That came later, really. Yeah. So, I kind of me and my wife had children young, and I kind of just knocked around town, kind of working in video stores. I worked for a long time in a video store. Yeah,
it's part of one of the shows you said, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And so, I kind of did that, and I got to about, my early 30s, and I was like, holy shit, what's happened?
You feel like I'm still kind of doing an early 20s guy job
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, I was wearing these chambray shirts and sort of seeing, you know, other people I went to school with suddenly, you know, having proper lives and stuff. So I thought, you know, what can I do that's not really, you know, a proper job, but, you know, potentially...
Still managing to support a young family on a video shop wage, though, so it must have been...
Oh, yeah.
Must have had a fairly okay shop owner, because I don't imagine would have got by very well on minimum wage.
Oh, it was okay.
It was okay.
Grey Lynn then, it was cheap, you know.
It
was really
is it
cheap.
that Video Easy that still survives?
Not the one that still survives. It's the one on Ponsonby Road. It's been taken over now by a restaurant, I think.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
They were great times.
And so I'm guessing you did you go to uni from high school, or you like?
No. Again, I kind of I think straight from high school, I just went straight into the drinking really, and then I spent about 4 years just doing that, you know, and then went to uni.
Yeah, 4 years drinking.
Yeah, 4 years.
Okay.
You know, it's a good solid effort.
I think I've been doing about 25, 30 years now.
I gave up.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah, not then, but later. Yeah.
So, sorry, I trailed you off. We're coming back to you. Have a sort of it's not a midlife crisis. It's a tale of retail crisis in your early 30s.
Yeah.
And how does that lead to kind of like getting into the production end of moving image?
I just went, you know, I guess I went to South Seas Film and TV School, and towards the end I did a doco for my final end of year project, and it was about a guy called... Oh shit, there's my phone, I'll stop that.
That's all right.
I will stop that. Sorry. But anyways, I did a doco for my end of year project.
Love is a Painkiller?
That's the one on the mighty Brett Hayward.
He was an interesting character. He's sort of like, he kind of reminded me a little bit of G.G. Allen, but then he kind of found God.
Yeah, except, you know, and he's still going. I don't know if he's still found God. I think that might have been to do with the girl he was seeing at the time, actually.
She's in the film.
Yeah.
That's right.
And one of the other guys in the film, a guy called Glenn Elliott, was the first guy I worked for.
Right. So
on the basis of interviewing him for the doco, he offered me a job.
Doing...
It was straight into directing and writing, and, you know, like, Glenn is an incredible character, you know.
Because not everyone who goes through something like film and television training ends up with a gig or a lot of gigs, right? It's about exactly what you described, like having someone like take you under your wing or finding somewhere to work, you know? Isn't that the difficult part of training for a lot of people?
I guess, but, you know, with Glenn as well, when we kind of got started, he had, I think, one production on.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I was getting paid $80 a week at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and... but it was a great opportunity, and I loved, you know, just work. He's a wild guy and really creative, and I just loved, you know, working with him.
You went to the Dawn Raid premiere, right? Because I saw you tweet about it. Did you go to the premiere of the Dawn Raid?
I haven't been yet.
You haven't been?
I was going to go last night, but I didn't because of the COVID stuff. I was like, I can't go. Yeah,
paranoia. Fair play at the moment because it's the great unknown. I can still ask this anyway. Like, there's an artist, I don't know Dawn Raid's catalogue that well at all. I knew all the kind of hits in the film, but there's an artist called Adiz who was their biggest artist. It was a duo of two young Polynesian guys, and they've kind of come out since the film and said they're kind of unhappy with what they thought they put across compared to what's in the final cut of the film.
Yeah.
So you've made a lot of doco, and I got to thinking, because I read that today and I knew I was coming to see you, like, how do you balance that line of, like, I guess, respecting and kind of not doing wrong by your subject, and the fact that, for those who don't know, documentary is telling truths, but it's using fictional structure, right? So you got to tell a story at the end of the day. You can't pack everyone and everything in.
Yeah, and I guess especially...
Why did you chuckle like that, by the way?
Well, because it's a very obvious direction you're heading
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So I guess we're talking about Wayne now, really.
Oh, no, later on. No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah,
that wasn't loaded towards that at all, actually. No,
well,
yeah.
I guess, and that is a real difficulty because...
I was actually more asking, hoping you'd seen it, because it does lead into talking about your work, but more from the point of view of how Oscar might feel now about this, because I don't believe that he would have done that out of spite. It's about the need to tell a story that has an arc and,
Yeah. And my understanding is that at Ease we're kind of like the big money makers for Dawn Raid as well.
No, that's right. It comes across in the film.
Yeah, and so I guess for them, I mean, I watched 24-Hour Party People. Have you seen that? It's,
Not for donkeys. Yeah.
Kind of like, like New Order effectively funded, this record label, and then, all of their money was gone when they folded.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think that there's a certain amount of kind of exploitation that occurs when you tell anyone's story.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you choose what bits of the story to tell, and you're making it for an audience, and you want it to be coherent, and you want it to be entertaining, and you want it to make sense. And like you said, this, it's an hour and a half long documentary that spans this, huge period of time.
And a huge amount of players and stakeholders, as the sort of technical term goes.
Yeah. And I think, with the Dawn Raid, I guess it's...
Sounds like a plane going over.
It does, yeah. I think it's just a truck, maybe.
It worried me a little how you didn't go, planes go over all the time.
No. Because I guess it's Andy and Brother D's story, is my understanding of... And I know that Oscar would have been, wanting to tell a great story, but, he'd be respectful.
Yeah.
And it always happens, people do get upset about how you tell their stories. And, in my own work, it really varies. At times, you're making stories for different reasons. And, with something like Wayne, where we're making something that's really blurring the lines between fact and fiction as well. We're really imposing a story onto this fantastic character that Glenn really discovered, and so we're trying...
Is this Glenn who you're saying basically is your mentor?
Yeah, well, he was the first guy I worked for, and that was one of the shows that just came out. I mean, before it got any broadcast, we were making that for years, and essentially I kind of ended up... I mean, it was such a long period of time that the very nature of fact and fiction got quite blurred. Well,
I was going to talk about this show later on, but great, let's go for it now. So for those who don't know, you created Wayne Anderson, singer of songs.
Well, I was one of the writers.
One of the writers,
I couldn't...
And you starred in it?
I was in it, yeah.
Yeah. And that came out, I think, about 2006. I wasn't familiar with it because I was out of the country for those years. But I have, and you can catch up with it on YouTube. So you talked about the origin story. Like, where was Wayne discovered, as it were, by you guys?
Well, Wayne was doing a lot of... he was doing support stuff for people like the Datsons and
roadie stuff. Oh no, sorry, support.
Yeah, he was coming on beforehand. There's a guy called John Baker who had kind of discovered Wayne, and Glenn saw him at these rock and roll shows. And Wayne is this hugely opinionated kind of guy and fantastic, just a fantastic human being.
Yeah,
just so unique and. And so Glenn started making this thing, and beyond having opinions, there was nothing Wayne was really doing. So we just needed to make a story around Wayne.
You mean like Wayne wasn't really sort of doing a lot day by day at the time?
Yeah, I mean, he was doing his everyday stuff, you know, and listening to records and singing occasionally. But he kind of really did have this dream. And I think, you know, it was kind of this master stroke of Glenn's to take him on this sort of journey and to kind of introduce some story around him.
A hero's journey.
Yeah, it was,
yeah.
You know, and ultimately kind of, I guess, unsuccessful, but at the same time a heroic journey of someone who really believed in something. And, you know, at the time we were talking about this notion that, you know, Wayne had this innate belief in himself and what he did.
But he's also got this... I mean, I've only watched one episode so far, because as I say, unlike most of New Zealand, I haven't seen it. And I watched the first one because I want to watch them all, probably tonight, inevitably. But there's also sort of like a really... you feel sorry for him because he's got that great belief, but you can also tell he's already really kind of like jaded by the fact that the industry hasn't kind of noticed him, and there's all these sort of like pop stars which he puts in a different basket. So you've got this quite delicate character, and I could tell by watching it that, yeah, you guys definitely... very obvious you're not trying to like go, ha, that guy. So you must have ridden a really fine line there, because like you say, you've got this guy that you want to make a great story about and you want him to be a part of it, but then also you do veer into mockumentary as well. Like, how the heck do you end up becoming the fake manager in the... Because it's very Flight of the Conchords, that part of it.
It is, and it's, yeah.
I don't mean you guys copied that, because it was around the same time.
It was beforehand. Why did I get a call? But no, I think one of the things was, because it took so long, so we're working on it for about 2 years before it got any funding.
Yeah.
And so I kind of inadvertently had assumed that role in Wayne's life anyway, you know, and so... while we were making it, you know, I was getting called every, you know, few days by Wayne, and
so you were part of it. Yeah,
I mean, I was just but there was an awareness, so I kind of, and I still keep in touch with Wayne. We still, you know, I still go out. He's and he's moved to Papakura now.
Yeah,
you might have seen him. He is in a great little series called Kura that was on recently, and. So in a way, it was kind of we kind of did, I guess, tread that line, and it was. I mean, the best thing I personally ever had said to me about that series was I was waiting for some takeaways one night, and a guy came up to me and said, "You're that guy from that series." And I said, "Yeah,
that's a classic
that's right.
public thing to say. You're that guy from that thing."
Yeah, that's right.
Aren't you that guy from that thing? Yeah.
And then he said. Yeah, I was in prison when it was on television.
Yeah.
And me and my friends used to watch it, and we loved it.
Yeah.
Because we knew there were people out there who were in a worse situation than we were. And, you know, in a way, you know, what I loved about it was just, you know, the kind of...
So it just occurs to me, you were kind of retroactively playing the most jaded end of your video shop career, weren't you? The tail end of before you wanted to get into what you got into doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of kind of truth in it all, you know, and I think as well, just that kind of sad splendour of the suburban dream.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's very poetic. Yeah.
And that was really what I loved about it, was all the. I mean, people laughed, but I kind of found this kind of also this beauty and, you know, the KFC and the, you know, just the life in South Auckland. You know,
the beauty of the I think I can't remember the order. It might be the sausages and beans being very carefully selected and talked about.
Yeah, this will be the one. This will be the one. Yeah, because it's got sausages in it as well, you see.
Followed by the pie at home.
Sometimes I have sauce on the pie, but what I actually like, because I like things so hot, sauce is cold, you see, is I actually heat up some of this spaghetti and sausages and use this instead of sauce, you see. So I actually heat that up and pour that over the top of the pie. So that way you've got, beautiful hot pie, and you've got some spaghetti and sausages piping hot over the top of it as well.
And then the wee review of the bacon and egg pie in that episode.
Bacon, cheese, what about a sausage
What's that,
roll?
bacon and egg? Get bacon and egg,
That'll do you?
Bacon and egg, will do. G'day, mate. How much is that? Yeah. It's not good to sing on a full stomach, but it's not good to sing on an empty stomach either, so haven't had anything since breakfast this morning, so this will be fine. Something nice and hot and nourishing.
Yeah.
It was so nicely placed.
And that's all, yeah. I mean,
You can't sing on an empty stomach. Yeah, oh, it's a nice hot pie.
And I mean, that's all Wayne, and,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent Glenn as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And again, it's great from the point of view of sitting here with you now that I wasn't here, because I can ask this and genuinely not know, but I know people know of the show. Like, what was, because we're actually still pre-Netflix and stuff then, so there's also more attention on TV. Was it one of those shows that sort of immediately hit with the public, or is it one of those ones that kind of had a repeat? And because people know the show, don't they?
Well, I think it probably played to a small audience, but people loved it. You know,
Yeah.
It was one of those late night kind of things. And
But it was on one of the big three channels, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was on TV2, I think. And I think the thing was that back in those days where we would all gather around the television, you know, is a much more of that kind of audience where you would just, the next day people would talk about television. It is pre-Netflix, so there's this
even just
gathering.
That the next day, totally. Even just saying, "Did you see da 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 last night?" The people have less of those conversations because the likelihood you did see the same thing as, 15 other people at your workplace is really actually quite unlikely these days.
Totally, and also there was a real lack of any other entertainment. You know, it was.
God, we sound like we're talking about the 60s. It's only about 15 years ago,
I know,
right?
but it was, it's all happened quite quickly, you know?
Yeah, it has.
I was talking to my 14-year-old. He couldn't believe there were only 2 channels when I grew up, you know?
Yeah. It's a lot to negotiate, and, like, both being involved in media different ways. Like, I teach a lot of thinking around this as listeners to my show know, because it comes up a bit. It's just such an area of such huge change. For me, I reckon, particularly in the last 10 years, how does that affect, has that affected, like, have you had to really change aspects of what you do in a big way, or do you still just, get on and make and produce films? Like, have you had to kind of reappraise how you approach, I don't know.
I just don't have an approach, really. I just kind of, occasionally I have a good idea, and occasionally, even more occasionally, it gets made. So I think that there's some great things happening in New Zealand. Like, I think the on-demand services where...
TVNZ On Demand is great.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's building up a really good resource, Yeah,
and so I've kind of had a couple of kind of things happen on there that would never have happened in kind of broadcast kind of...
Yeah, because TVNZ On Demand also takes on things like web series and stuff, don't they? And they also they've got a lot more kind of diversity. They've got shorter stuff, they've got longer stuff. Because I thought about that with things like Netflix, not exclusive to chatting to you. I've thought about this before as well, but it really applies to what you do. Like, have you thought about how without things like TVNZ On Demand, like the worry for me with Netflix only is we lose all these local voices from around the world, and like 2 New Zealand things get programmed on the local service. Is it, is that a concern, or?
Well, I guess that's why it's pretty good to have a national broadcaster, and to a certain extent, the Prime and TV3 are also, doing their bit and programming, some great local content. So I think there's probably more happening in terms of that now than really there ever has. But you're probably seeing less eyeballs, though, on it.
Yeah. The expectations are less numbers-wise for things to be a success, which I think is great. If the whole lot of stuff can be fed and be produced and have people working, then surely that's a great thing. You don't need 5 blockbusters, you know.
Oh, and also diversity of voices. You know, I mean, Māori television, their existence is fantastic. You know, that.
You worked for them for a number of years, right?
Not for Māori television, but I worked
contracting or producing stuff for them.
People who made a lot of shows for Māori television. Yeah.
Well, to me, like the way I see it is TVNZ, like with on demand and stuff, have kind of got their, I guess, mana, is that too strong a word, back with me as an audience member over the years? Because for a while there, when all those channels were just like terrible reality television, Māori TV kind of felt like our public broadcaster, even though it wasn't supposed to be, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is great, really great. Hey, the term producer, I was looking at your credits, whatever it was, and I think a lot of people know, you know, even your layperson has a fairly good idea of what a director does. But I think producers thrown around a lot of different ways. It's the same with music production as well. So you as a producer of a lot of the projects you've worked on, what does that entail? Is it an organisational role?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, and trying to support, I guess, the director as well, and having some kind of creative input into it, but ultimately just trying to, I guess, help a story be told. You know, I still do directing, and I direct for other people. Yeah. I directed the latest series of Anika Moa. Yeah. And that was for someone else, so I still do that kind of freelance directing. And so with producing, it's kind of almost just something that happened accidentally, really.
How did it happen?
Well, it kind of happened. I mean, I was producing some of the stuff I was making for a company called Scotty Productions, but I was being, you know, helped a lot by Meg Douglas, who owned that company. And then I met a kind of upcoming filmmaker called Hamish Bennett, who wanted me to act in one of his films called The Dump. It was a short film. Yeah. And I ended up producing it too, because we got $10,000 from the Film Commission to make it. And it was just, you know, easier for me to produce. And then I sort of produced his second film. He never asked me to act again. But I stayed on as a producer, and I ended up producing his feature called Bellbird with Catherine Fitzgerald. So I had a really great mentor in her. And I've kind of...
That's a really recent project for you, isn't it, in the scheme of things? That's your first kind of fictional feature, because you did the doco a few years back as well. Yeah, chat about later. So there, one thing you spoke of there, that was what I was curious about, because it's obvious that you have a creative bent with these projects, is that you do have creative input. Because I thought that often producing was just more of a project management role. So you do get to like have your creative juices flow. It sounds like, but the way that people, the public, say it's like you know, I want to be a director or I want to be an actor. To me, it's like that's the lead guitarist, but you're like the bass player or the drummer. It's like, so basically, you know what I mean? It's like this incredibly
guitar tech.
Not tech. Incredibly, you know, important, but not as glamorized by audiences, I guess. Yeah, because a lot of directors get a lot of coverage, I think, as I say, with all the I guess, would they be below the line? Well, with all the non-actors, that seems to be the role that the public kind of knows, as I say.
Totally, but I mean, you probably don't know the directors of most television. I think in film that's true. Yeah. And quite often, like one of the series I made sort of just after Bellbird called Who Killed Lucy the Poodle, which was
fucking crazy. That
and all true, and very much driven by like the writer director Kent. You know, it's his story, and I mean, for me, a bit like with Hamish's one, you know, protecting or not protecting, you know, but nourishing or helping him tell his story was was a real driving force in that, because it's such a nutty, fantastic story.
It was one of those docos that, again, your sort of talent for finding things that are could feel like they could blend over into fiction. Like, it was one of those ones, I think, for the first wee bit, like, from, did I actually do this? Doesn't matter. But I felt like I should Google it to see if it actually happened, you know? I quite like docos like that. Yeah. Like with Tickled, with when Farrier came out with Tickled, like, I actually did quite a bit of due diligence online with that to make sure I wasn't getting Banksy'd by that film.
Yeah.
I love those. So how did you find the fellow who made, what's it called, Who Killed Lucy the...
I didn't find him.
Who Killed Lucy the Poodle? That's right, eh?
That's it,
Yeah.
So Kent and I worked back in the day at Budapest, Glenn's company. So we kind of met there, and we've kind of knocked around since then. And I was on a shoot, I think, up north with Bellbird, and you know, he got in touch over the project, and we just put it into TVNZ. And I think the commissioner there, a woman called Vicky Keogh. I mean, Kent is a genius with images, and you know, he just put together this 3-page prop with this kind of picture of a performing poodle, and I think that picture just haunted Vicky. You know, this and the whole notion of the story. You know, it's one that, like you said, it's. I mean, I don't find the weirdness. The weirdness finds me, you know. And
is it
so,
you?
I don't know. It was. I mean, people come to me with these stories. It's not like you know. And this is you know, Kent was there that day. You know, it was and it was such an interesting project to be part of, because we went into this. Back to the 80s, you know, and this kind of circus life that I knew nothing of.
No, you're right,
so
actually.
colourful.
It did. Now you mentioned it did, and I think it was because there was actually quite a bit of archival footage, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So, it did recapture that New Zealand we were just talking about before, with things like a couple of TV channels, you know, a different New Zealand.
Totally,
It's fascinating to watch. You're letting yourself off a little lightly there. How does the weirdness surely doesn't just find you accidentally?
It does, be. It does. It really does. I mean, I think I like those kind of things.
What do you like? Yeah, like what do you like? Documentary-wise, yourself, for example, like it's a bit of a put you on the spot question, but
it really is.
What do you? I mean, you know, a couple of films that you've kind of gone back to over the years or whatever.
Well, I mean, some that kind of really, you know, I guess talk to that. There's one called, I think it was The King of Kong, which is a kind of...
A Fistful of Quarters.
Yeah, or the one about the guy who's trying to kind of break the Donkey Kong record, and there's a bad guy, this guy who... all-American guy, and it's very much structured like a kind of Rocky movie, really. Yeah,
and I think and like you got to have those ingredients, right? It's got those elements there already. Like he's kind of known as a bit of a bad fella in those circles to begin with.
Wrestling with Shadows, the Jake the Snake story, I think it was called. Yeah, I like those kind of. I love Tickled. I love those kind of stranger than fiction kind of stories.
That must have, I mean, it amazed me as an audience member, but from a filmmaker's point, what unfolded, which from a filmmaker's point of view, like, isn't it crazy? He went to do one thing and it unravelled completely somewhere he never would have been able to guess it would have gone. And then his kind of career's opened up as a result of that as well.
Oh, and it's just fantastic, you know. It's such a... I mean, one of the things that I think is quite extraordinary is just how brave he was, you know.
Dude, totally. Like, I watched those and I think that I could do that sort of thing. I couldn't.
No,
I couldn't. He's got big kahunas, as they say.
Yes.
To keep pushing on with it.
That's what they say about David.
Yeah. The humorous element as well. I mean, it's a sort of an obvious... director, but Christopher Guest's films you like?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I love those, and you know, there's also just some wild, just documentaries from the 80s and that I remember being quite taken by. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a documentary about an Australian family who were really kind of pretty obnoxious, and it was almost like the first time I'd seen that kind of biting kind of satire.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go home and try and figure out what that is.
I can't. I just can't remember what it was called. But
no, leave it for people to Google. We don't want to figure it out now.
And also, the Rats in the Rafters. Have you seen that?
No.
Rats in the Ranks, rather. Rats in the Ranks, about another Australian one about a local body election where the people just forget there's a camera there and just open up and are really devious, and it's incredible. So,
what do you think about Errol Morris's films? I don't normally get all asking people about directors.
I love Errol Morris. Yeah, he's incredible.
Were you the video shop employee who the whole way through just took home film after film after film?
But everyone there did.
Yeah, but saying you must have watched thousands of titles over those years.
Definitely, and it was a great.
Have you been to a trivia night since then and got film questions?
No, because that's the thing, is I actually have a terrible memory.
Yeah, I'm the same. That's why you gave me that look like, oh no, when you said that. So I'm the same with with music, and because I DJ a bit, and people will refer to a track that I've played over and over, and I don't remember half the details. What do I DJ?
What genre?
All sorts of music. I haven't really a lot for the last few years. I do a vinyl only thing down on the waterfront about once a month, and I might pack a bit of hip hop, a bit of reggae, a bit of funk, a bit of 90s kind of electronic-y, breaky stuff all over the place.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's it is hard to be asked those questions, isn't it?
It is.
I gave you the same look.
yeah. There we go. Yeah.
So. What else did I watch yesterday or today? I did a bit of a marathon, an Orlando marathon. Yeah. Oh yeah, the series that the spin-off said was a spin-off said a reviewer back in the day said was like a New Zealand with Nail and I, which I really liked. You and your friend up north.
Right, yeah.
I watched the one where a peacock wasn't given a very fair go of it.
Yeah.
Now, you say the weirdness finds you. That's yours, and that was pretty weird, man.
Yeah, I guess so. I love Northland. I love that community that was up in Horeki, which is such a fantastic, oldest, or maybe second oldest pub in New Zealand. And, that one is almost... It was weird that we even got funding, because it's like just a home movie. The guy, Nathan, who I made it with, is an old family friend. He used to go out with my sister.
Yeah.
They broke up. She moved out and he stayed. And then, it was kind of a strange, we just made up a story. Kent, who did Who Killed Lucy the Poodle, actually directed that.
I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Rural Drift.
And it was 4, not many episodes, right? And
Six, but it's a weird one. I've only just found a DVD, which means it lives, because...
That was my next question. Is it to do with licensing or something?
No, it's not to do
with... So you've got...
We lost it!
Right. So you found it holding up a couch or something?
I just went through a pile of DVDs and I found one, and I could get to the root menu, so I've only just the only thing that exists of that series now is a standard definition thing that I'm kind of too scared to put online.
But I think, why not? Unless, do you mean the video quality of it?
No, more just it's funny when you're in things. I can't watch anything I'm in.
No, yeah. I have to go back and edit these, and I don't like listening. I'm certainly not. This isn't a narcissistic project. I hate listening back. It's fine doing the producing,
Yeah.
but the going on back. But I mean, you've got Wayne Anderson, singer of songs, up. Was that not your decision?
No, I think that's just been people putting it up, really. Yeah.
How does that work in New Zealand? Is it like everywhere else in terms of licensing and so on? Like, could someone pull that, or? It's just great having stuff up there. I'm glad when it is.
I don't really care,
I thought you'd put it up.
No,
yeah.
no. I mean, I'm all for people. I'd prefer it to be public and people to be able to watch it. I don't.
Yeah.
You're never going to make $1 million off stuff that I make.
You still make short films, right? Periodically, they're often, from my understanding, at the beginning of kind of filmmakers' careers. Is that because as in your production role, you're doing just that? You're ushering in new people and making those films. I just saw a couple of short films dotted more recently in your list of credits.
Yeah, I mean, I do still do short films from time to time. It's more just when friends want, it's kind of that thing where I just get asked and say yes.
Yeah.
Stupidly, really.
Yeah. What are you working on at the moment?
I've got a couple of feature films that'll probably get made in 10 to 12 years.
Why is that?
Oh, it's just a long grind.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Even developing them. And I've got a few TV projects that are kind of on the go, but it's nothing kind of set in stone right now. I'm sort of just looking for things and developing some ideas that hopefully someone wants to pay for.
So you write screenplays and so on as well?
I don't really write the screenplays. I come up with some ideas and I used to write from time, but then you become a bit of a hack. There's people better than me and keener. So
what's a day here then? You're in your production office. It sounds like you're the very useful jack of all trades.
Yeah, what have I done today? So
I'm not policing. I'm not policing what you've done today.
No. So I've just put together some.
I've been looking for ideas on YouTube.
Some pitch documents.
Yeah.
I've just had a visit from a guy who I make a. There's a couple of guys who make an animated show called Welcome to Cardboard City.
Yeah.
It's a kids show. It's fantastic.
That started off with a short film, kind of a faux action film.
Yeah, and those guys, Phil,
with the Hauraki guys.
Well, Phil, Matt from Hodaki, who produces and writes, and Phil, who animates and directs. And they're guys from Back of the Y, which I don't know. I wonder if you were here for that.
No, I wasn't, but I've heard a lot about that as well.
Show, and so they're kind of just friends. So we went out and filmed some stuff a while back, and I just had a meeting with Phil, about the next lot of filming we're going to do that will then have animation put into it. I mean, it's all pretty DIY, I like small teams and just pissing about, doing different stuff. Yeah,
it's great to be able to maintain that for so many years, right? Because it must be tough at certain times. Because I was thinking about that with the way, how to put it, there's kind of waves of things that come and go. Because I was just thinking when you talked about Back of the Y and then Wayne's show, and if I'm kind of drawing straws for something that isn't there, that's fine. Just tell me. But is there something in the water that produced that kind of irreverence of broadcasting at the time? Because as I said to you, like when I came back, probably just like when I lived in Aussie, like TV was really straight and boring, and reality TV and white teeth, and there seems to be phases where more interesting stuff kind of comes and goes.
Yeah, well, I think that there was really that.
God, some of that reality TV got really bad, man.
But it was also like you think that was also the time when you could get a camera, and I think for the Back of the Y guys and even the stuff we did for Wayne, kind of both of those things. Glenn's company kind of grew out of like that Triangle TV, which was a kind of
almost like New York public access TV.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was, and so did Back of the Y. So they would, they were making stuff that was unfunded, and was interesting, and there was an audience for it.
Yeah.
It's the same with there were like Max TV was happening, and there's all that really interesting music television stuff happening, and I guess around that time it would have been the Havoc and Newsboy stuff.
Yeah, that
too.
was before that. Yeah.
So there was some really, Paul Cassidy's stuff was really happening, and it was, such a great little era. It was almost like, in some ways, I'd say it grew out of that kind of student radio culture.
Yeah, totally. A lot of stuff came out of being that. Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because there was another wave of that I with television, because I've heard a few people speak on it, like Guy Montgomery and Rose Matafeo and a bunch of other names I'm not going to recall from that era, the younger comics and so on. Like, they speak the same way about, did you notice when there was that TVNZU for a while, about 2010?
Yeah.
Well, they speak of that, like getting that freedom on television. They don't say this, but I hear it and go, well, that's student radio you've described. So giving people that opportunity to kind of like just do stuff on the smell of an oily rag is really important, right?
Oh, definitely.
So often missing that kind of access thing. I wonder with that now, like, I guess kids do that now by doing that via YouTube, right? It's different audiences, it's people wherever. So I suppose there still is that kind of outlet. It's interesting.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there are, places like, RNZ are doing video content now, and they're doing podcast first stuff. And what I mean by that's very different to radio, is like TVNZ on demand. It means that you get shows like Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower, which is like a depressed young comedian of Polynesian origin. So they're getting diversity in their voices, by doing all that online stuff. Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Do you do much for online only?
Well, a lot of the stuff I have been doing has been online only. Who Killed Lucy the Poodle and Sextortion were both...
Oh, yeah, I did watch that online.
We're both online.
Yeah,
eventually, I think Who Killed Lucy the Poodle ended up with a late night slot on television.
Yeah, that rings a bell too.
But yeah, it was made for on demand. Yeah.
So does it, without, so you don't have to get specifics, it would be dull, but also it's sort of it's no reason an audience should be privy to it. But is it like New Zealand On Air? You apply for funding, you get accepted to do a show, and then TVNZ agree to buy that from the production company for a certain price?
How it usually works, I mean, both of those shows are made directly with direct funding from TVNZ, who, occasionally put up these...
calls for...
Yeah. And but in general, what will happen is, before you go to NZ On Air, you go to the broadcaster. So NZ On Air will fund things that have a platform. Yeah. So you need to have, and it's the same with film, you need to have distribution on board. And I guess that's part of the producing is, just having those relationships and being trusted to deliver something.
Do you think how long do you think cinemas have got left in them?
Man,
another anecdote. I don't go enough. It's terrible. It's like when people say, "Oh, I'm really sad all the record shops are shut," and then you say to them, "When did you buy last buy a record?" And they say 8 years ago. I went to the cinema last week, which I haven't done for ages, to the Dawn Raid film, and there were only I know it's not Lord of the Rings or whatever. I get that, but still, 8:30 on a Thursday night in town, there were 6 of us in the theatre.
Wow,
it's a worry, isn't it? Well, so I sort of cut you off there, but the question I asked you was...
It is actually, I think it's tracking really well in terms of its box office. But, yeah, I mean...
I don't mean films, I mean going to the cinema.
Yeah, I would hate to see it go.
No, we'd hate to see it go, we love it, it's all of that, but how long, do you think realistically it's like... It's gonna have a decade in it, or 50 years, or it'll keep going forever?
I think for a certain amount of time. I think I live out in Avondale, and there's fantastic cinema out there, the Hollywood, which kind of mixes up live performance.
Oh, it's great cinema.
And
run by Hugh. Is it still run by Hugh?
Yeah, I think Hugh and Matt Timpson, who's...
I went and saw Apocalypse Now there, a redo for one of the 2 film festivals ago.
Yeah.
And quite often when you go to festival films, or any film for that matter, a lot of the chain cinemas these days don't think about the particulars of the film they're showing in terms of how they project it and present the sound and so on. Like, for example, the Dawn Raid sound wasn't loud. The Dawn Raid film wasn't loud enough, and it was just
really?
things like that. That's right. I was like, don't let this ruin you, you stupid nerd. Just get into it. And I did. I got in the story. But anyway, this Apocalypse Now screening, they just took this theatre down jet black, just had the sound up. Like, it was one of the best film experience, like movie theatre experiences I've had in years, So I think there's part of it, that kind of like boutique-y thing where you know your audience.
Oh, absolutely.
And you get them along. Because it just made me think, when did you finish up at video shops? What year? Roughly.
Let me think. It would have been, let me have a think, 2003, maybe.
Okay, so you were before, because I was just...
It was absolutely...
So that conversation of like, how long is this going to last, was already happening with video shops?
Well, it had changed, there's that big change from like... VHS to DVD. I was there for the DVD revolution.
Big expense for those shops that have hired out the same film 120 times.
Quite a lot like what happened with music. Where the digital revolution ushered in this kind of age of piracy.
Yeah.
And so as soon as DVDs came in, you're also seeing, the rise of kind of things like Pirate Bay, and so they're kind of doomed, really.
Kazaa or something back then, yeah. And people actually having even in the late 90s, knowing someone who could burn a CD, let alone DVDs didn't really exist in New Zealand then, was had to be someone in the studio. So getting access to that equipment. Is it true that porn's the lifeblood of video shops, turnover wise?
Well, I mean, not our video store. It did have a nice.
So is that like an urban myth?
I would say for some it's true. And
because I've even heard you probably know this is a pretty well known bit of trivia that pornography drives format changes historically.
Yeah. Well, they reckon that's why VHS won out over beta, didn't it was because the pornography was, VHS let them use the technology,
So in your store, wasn't pornography that was the big, I guess there's just certain films in general that get hired over and over and over and over? Or is it mainly new releases?
It was mainly new releases, but there's a massive festival section. I mean, you had your regular kind of guys who would come and get out their 5 porns.
Yeah.
I remember one startling day when... someone did take a tape out of the return box and it was covered in jizz.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. You don't get that in digital media.
No.
That's something you really miss out on.
No, you end up not. You end up
tell that to the kids today; they just won't believe you.
They end up turn off their Zoom cameras too late. That's the trouble these days. No, you just completely ruined my train of thought with the video shop thing. It was quite startling. Did you see Be Kind Rewind?
Yeah, I did.
Did you enjoy that as a shop employee?
I did quite enjoy it, but no one really kind of gets that. I mean, the thing about video store culture was, the one that stands out for me, I loved Clark's, was that kind of nerdy talk that goes on.
High Fidelity was great for that, even though it's record shop. It's really similar. It's a rom-com. It's the most un-rom-com-y. Have you ever thought about that? High Fidelity is actually a rom-com when you look at it.
Well, yeah.
I love that film. It's one of those films I can just blob out to and watch over and over and over.
Yeah, I didn't really see the series, but I loved the movie.
I haven't seen the series. It got me on a big John Cusack thing, way later than everyone else. Because you're really with your films, is one of the first things I spotted is you're really into character driven stuff, right? Like, I'd imagine you're not really a fantasy Lord of the Ringsy kind of film aficionado, or
No, I mean, I went and, I mean, like, you know, all good Kiwis, I went and watched all the Lord of the Rings.
I went and watched part of one.
Did you?
That's a taste thing. That's all right.
I was pretty. In fact, I actually watched half of one on television the other day, and it was kind of. I mean, I was just such a big Peter Jackson fan anyway for his Spider
of course.
movies.
But are they? Is that the same? Is that really the same catalogue?
No, but I'm so proud of him.
No, absolutely, yeah.
It,
and no, totally. And like, I have to be careful when I say that. Like, I've joked about it in front of my students, and I've said, like, look, it's only my opinion. I'm not, not dissing his work.
No.
Not dissing his work. I'm just when we're talking about taste, like with them, we talk about all of this sort of stuff and da 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 da. But I do think is 3+ hours, 4 hours, unless it's an absolute classic that needs it. Is that actually holding your audience hostage? I don't know.
Well, it's funny. Those first reviews were kind of like. They talked about them as in the same breath as kind of David Lean movies. Like they were the new kind of Lawrence of Arabia. So they had this kind of almost aspect of it that was like classical movie making. At the time. Yeah.
It's like I used to say with that sort of. Enough said on Peter Jackson. It's an interesting
perspective. I love characters. To go back.
I was thinking thinking about his contribution as well. Like, it's marked for me because a whole lot of talented, creative friends I had, and I think I sometimes wonder if I'm telling the same stories over and over on the podcast at this stage. But leaving Wellington in the late 90s as I did, and then coming back periodically, when I lived elsewhere, and just seeing all these people who were suddenly really quite well paid and gainfully employed through Peter Jackson. Like, I saw Wellington's creative community kind of lifted, doing things like very grown up things like buying houses, and it certainly did really good things. You like character driven stuff, you were saying. So the new film, which I haven't, I've not seen a bean of it. I think I've watched the preview, but that's your first move. You're producing it to a drama, right? Rather than a comedy or not comedy or a it's a fictional drama rather than a documentary with comical tinges. Have I got that right?
Is that Bellbird?
Yeah, Bellbird.
Yeah. So that's a drama, but also, I mean, it's really another person who is just immensely talented. A guy called Hamish Bennett who, and it's got elements that are funny. So. But it is at its heart a drama. It's very much set in the community that Hamish grew up in and around kind of the people he remembered in a little place called Maunga Karamea, just outside of Whangarei. So it's
and he'd been around for a while as filmmaking.
Well, he was at the time we were making his short films. He was teaching. He's still teaching. We took off some time to make the film. I think he's in that place now where he, probably making some choices around whether he wants to, just go full on into film. I mean, he's really talented and I was just, hanging on the coattails of other people's talents as usual.
What makes a good director?
Well, God knows, someone
trumpet sound.
Probably, I guess having a pretty clear vision, being able to articulate yourself,
organisation,
and also trusting, people who have spent their whole lives, learning their craft.
So being not afraid to delegate, like to trust the process
and share your vision. Like don't hold on to it because there's people probably better than you at certain elements. So trust them.
What was the film about? The making of Apocalypse Now?
Is Hearts of Darkness.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
I fucking loved it. I loved it. I thought it was better than Apocalypse
Now. Honestly, yeah. What a story. That's what got me thinking about directing, because I only saw that. That was one of those ones on the list for years, and I only watched it recently.
Yeah.
My God, what a project.
There's one called Burden of Dreams about the making of Fitzcarraldo.
Yeah, okay.
Which is also just fucking phenomenal.
Do you get kind of anxiety watching something like that? Like with having kind of,
Mate, I'm just, it's just so different to, the scale and ambition of those guys is terrifying.
Say an interesting character, because you mentioned it earlier on, and I just left it to come back on, is how is it working with Anika Moore? Is Anika like that? Does she turn on that, do people accentuate themselves? Is Anika the Anika we see on screen, off screen? Or does she turn the volume up slightly?
No, I think she is. I mean, she's obviously not that person the whole time, but the thing with Anika is she's funny, she's big-hearted and warm, she's really brave, one of the bravest people I've ever met. Yeah. But the thing is, you've got, one of the difficult things is it's kind of like, it's like lightning in a bottle. So, you have to capture it then and there, and you don't ask her to do things twice. It's not like walk in again. This time, let's get a close up of your hand knocking.
It's like you got to capture the moment when it happens.
Holy fuck! What the hell
herding
just
cats?
Happened? Yeah. Well, it's more just you just kind of make sure the release forms are signed and let her drive it. She's like.
So then, how was the episode with her and Mikey? Must have been kind of a bit of a even more madcap.
How would you and the boys feel about singing with a chick? Could you handle it?
I don't know. Will we handle you, Anika? That's a great gammy eye, You've
got a good gammy eye, too.
I'm wondering whether you stole your gammy eye from me, actually.
I think I might have, because you're one of my idols.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because, that's
it's like
really
a Ritalin convention.
Yeah. and also just incredibly honest people. And I think that they actually...
For better or for worse, both. Yeah, really like, yeah.
And I think they kind of really connected in that way.
Yeah.
Because they quite similar in some ways,
Yeah.
Just these really,
it's a really great answer, because I thought all those things when I watched it. Yeah. I could sort of see that.
And wasn't that performance as well of Trippin really great,
Yeah, I think what's happened is, because talking to you reminded me to go back, but I think only the first three had dropped, so I've only seen up to Sisters Underground. That was super interesting too, because I totally, being a student radio guy, that song was huge back then. So I found that really interesting, getting them over and all the rest of it. So I've got to watch the new ones. I think the point of that is I think they've only gone up recently.
Yeah, they have only gone up recently.
There was three, and then a big pause, and then...
And, with Sisters Underground, that was when I lived at the convent with my family, Hassana, who is one half of Sisters Underground, the American one...
Yeah.
She was our neighbour and was kind of, she was when she was about 10, she was in a group with my sister.
So
the Jam Steady crew, little known.
So you find that on
family.
So this would be great. If it didn't happen, that's fine, but it would be great. So when she comes back over, because she's doing this show with Anika, does she know that she's going to see you, her old neighbour?
Because I got in touch,
it up.
and also we had a family dinner for her and stuff, because we were really close with her family.
Oh, cool!
So it's just one of those weird, lovely coincidences of, that she came over, and it was lovely to take her to go and visit my sister, and she got to meet her, my sister's kids, and it was.
I'm trying to remember what happened on camera, but. Doesn't matter either way, but no. But I'm saying no. But I'm saying that for those two, the two girls, because you never know, it might have just been a moment in time. Like, was it quite a genuinely full-on moment when they reacquainted?
Yeah.
Because she'd kind of gone back to the States and not come back, had she?
Well, they'd kind of kept in touch, but it was a weird kind of thing where, they just went off, and I don't think they're quite aware of how
much of an impact.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I loved about that as well was Alan Jansen, who is the guy who produced it, and is such
the New Zealand hitmaker, basically.
Yeah, well, How Bizarre, and also like, back in the day, he was in a band called Body Electric.
Yeah,
who
sing to
at the music, electronic audio.
Electrodes.
Yeah, and it's
Electrodes.
so cool. It's so fucking cool, that song.
It is
and
really cool.
I think they're re-releasing. So, and also, previous to that was in some punk bands and
Yeah.
yeah.
We should end on that terrible rendition of Pulsing. You said, how long is it? And I said an hour or so. Yeah, that's a long time. We've chatted for an hour and 5 minutes. So
There we go.
hopefully that didn't seem
No,
too long
good,
and
mate.
excruciating.
Yeah, my hands aren't too sweaty.
No, and the microphone sounded great, and this held in its place, which is
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Episode 95.
Wow, I'll change my name by default.
Verbal high straight down from up above.
Right, thank you to the following people. Understatement, I can't thank you enough. The following people for not only the physical donation following me getting burgled and the podcast going off the rails, but the fact that this donation process actually had a arguably even more powerful effect of making me really motivated to get back on with the show, and here we are with the first of those episodes. So Juggalo salutations to all of you. God, it's a proper list. David Gifford Moore, Steve, Dave Peck, Sam Scott, Malcolm Bethel, Jasmine Sullivan, Linda Corner, Kay McMahon, Brent Petherick, Nor, Jen Goddard, Sam Morley, DJ 8, that's Andy Pickering, Belle LeBou, probably pronounced her surname wrong, Philippa, she's got one name, she's DJ, Johnny Wharton, Craig Spragan, Nick Collins, Navarre, Rob Warner, Steve Gallagher, that's a good woo woo, Jenny Watts.
Yeah, a lot of whoop whoop. A lot of it, man.